A low hum vibrated through the air, a sound so deep it seemed to resonate in our bones. The ship before us pulsed with a strange rhythm, like a heartbeat, its dark surface shifting in ways that defied explanation. None of us spoke. We simply stared, caught between awe and a growing sense of unease. Then the ground shook again. Not violently, but enough to make us instinctively brace ourselves. The tremor wasn't natural. It felt controlled, deliberate. Like a warning. Valric's hand hovered over his sidearm, but he didn't draw it. Weapons wouldn't help us here. Not against whatever was happening. Scan the structure, he ordered, his voice steady. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. Rel's fingers danced over his wrist device, but his brow furrowed as the data streamed in. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. The ship is ancient, thousands of years old at least. But its core is active. Fully functional. He turned his gaze to Valric, his expression unreadable. And it's aware of us. Jorik let out a slow breath. You mean it's alive? Not in the way we understand, Rel said. But something is in there. Watching us. A cold feeling crawled up my spine. The ship wasn't just a piece of advanced technology left behind by some forgotten race. It was something more. Something waiting. Valric took a cautious step forward. The ship's surface reacted instantly, shifting beneath the dim light like liquid metal. Strange symbols rippled across its body, the human script flickering against the alien etchings. We had seen countless languages across the stars, but nothing like this, a seamless blend of two species, woven together in a way that shouldn't have been possible. Someone built this, Jorik whispered. But who? And why was it hidden here? I added. Why bury something like this instead of using it? Rel's voice was tense. Maybe they couldn't. Silence fell between us. The implications were too vast, too unsettling. If humanity had discovered something this powerful, something beyond their own understanding, why hadn't they used it to propel themselves beyond their fragile fleets? Why had they abandoned it in a decaying military outpost instead of wielding it as their greatest weapon? The answer, I feared, was standing right in front of us. The air inside the facility seemed thicker now, pressing against us, charged with an unseen force. We weren't alone. Not in the way we first thought. There were no guards, no sentries. No surviving humans to claim their lost technology. But there was something else. Jorik suddenly stiffened. Do you hear that? At first, I thought it was just the hum of the ship. But then I caught it, a faint whisper, distant yet close, like a voice carried through a broken transmission. It wasn't in our language. It wasn't in any language we recognized. But somehow we understood. You should not be here. The words sent a chill through me. They weren't a threat. They were a warning. Valric's expression darkened, his stance shifting. We came for answers, he said firmly, as if speaking directly to the presence. We didn't come to destroy. The whisper returned, softer this time, but no less haunting. And yet destruction follows. A sudden pulse of energy rippled outward from the ship, sending a shockwave through the ruined facility. The walls groaned. Debris rattled. My vision blurred for a split second, like reality itself had fractured. Then, as quickly as it started, the disturbance stopped. Rel gasped, his eyes wide with disbelief. Valric, the ship's interface, it's unlocked. We turned as one. The ship's hull had shifted, a narrow opening forming where there had been only smooth, seamless metal before. A door. An invitation. Or a trap. Valric didn't hesitate. He took a step toward the entrance, but before he could cross the threshold, the whisper returned, colder this time. Not all who enter leave. I felt my breath hitch. The ship had been waiting for something. Or someone. And now it had chosen us. A distant hum filled the command deck as our vessel slipped past the swirling clouds of Earth's atmosphere. We had visited countless worlds, seen dying stars and newborn moons, but nothing prepared us for what we found here. This planet, so small and unremarkable in the vast sprawl of the cosmos, held something no species had ever managed to create. A ship beyond anything we could have imagined. Captain Valric stood at the helm, his deep violet eyes narrowing as he studied the data stream flowing across the holographic display. Confirm readings, he murmured, though he already knew the answer. The ship existed, and it was like nothing in our archives. I don't understand, Rel, our lead engineer, muttered, his long fingers dancing over the controls. The technology is primitive in some areas, but this power signature, he trailed off, his mandibles clicking in frustration. This shouldn't be possible. Humans had barely reached beyond their own star system. Their vessels were fragile, slow, reliant on primitive chemical reactions and clunky fusion drives. And yet, buried beneath an abandoned military outpost, hidden away like a secret they were never meant to share, was a vessel that defied every law of physics we understood. We weren't the first ones here. The wreckage of other scavengers littered the perimeter. Burned-out hulls, shattered drones, the twisted remains of those who had tried to claim the prize and failed. "Something's protecting it," said Jorik, the youngest of our crew. His voice was hushed, as if speaking too loudly might awaken whatever force had left those wrecks in its wake. "Or someone." Vowrick nodded. "Then we'll be careful." We moved under the cover of darkness, weaving between rusting towers and crumbling walls, the air thick with the scent of decay and machine oil. The facility had been abandoned for years, yet the sensors still flickered, catching our movements like ghostly echoes in the ruins. The closer we got, the more wrong everything felt. Shadows stretched where they shouldn't. The silence was too perfect, pressing against us like a living thing. And then, deep in the heart of the facility, we saw it. The ship. It didn't belong to humans. Not entirely. The sleek, obsidian hull pulsed with an energy we couldn't comprehend, its surface shifting as if it were alive. Symbols glowed faintly along its body. Human script, but intertwined with something older, something not of this world. "This is beyond our wildest dreams," Rel whispered, awe and terror warring in his voice. "It's not just a ship. It's a fusion of their technology and something else. Something far older." Jorik swallowed hard. "What if it doesn't want to be taken?" Vowrick exhaled slowly. "Then we make sure it does." But as we took our first step forward, the ground trembled. The ship's core flared with light, and somewhere in the darkness something stirred. Something that had been waiting for us. Vowrick hesitated for only a moment before stepping toward the open entrance. The rest of us exchanged uneasy glances, but we knew there was no turning back. Whatever was inside this ship, whatever had been waiting, had made its choice. And we had made ours. The air inside was different. Thicker. Warmer. The moment we crossed the threshold, our suits adjusted to compensate for the shift in pressure. The walls pulsed with a dull glow, as if responding to our presence, guiding us deeper. The corridors were impossibly smooth, curving in ways that made them feel more organic than mechanical. This wasn't just technology. It was something else. Jorik ran a hand over the surface. "It feels alive." Rel was already scanning. No obvious control panels. No navigation system. Whatever powers this ship, it's not like anything we've seen before. The deeper we went, the more we felt it. A presence. Not hostile, not aggressive, but aware. Watching. And then we reached it, the core. A massive chamber stretched before us, unlike anything in the ruined human facility outside. A central structure hovered in the air, twisting and shifting, the symbols along its surface glowing with an eerie light. It wasn't just alien. It was a fusion. Human designs interwoven with something far older. A collaboration that should have never existed. Vowrick's voice was low. This wasn't just hidden. It was abandoned. Jorik exhaled sharply. By who? The humans? Or the ones who built it? Before anyone could answer, a ripple of energy spread across the walls. A shape flickered in the air, a figure indistinct and blurred, like a projection from another time. A voice followed, crackling through the space like an old transmission barely holding together. "This is Captain Elias Voss of the US Deliverance. If you're hearing this, we failed." The image wavered, but for a moment we saw him, a human, face lined with exhaustion, his uniform torn, blood smeared across one sleeve. His eyes darted around like he was being hunted. This ship, it was never meant to exist. We built it, but we didn't understand what we were doing. We thought we could control it. Static swallowed the next words, and then the image jumped, flickering forward. His face was closer now, his voice urgent. "If you found this message, listen to me. Do not try to take the ship. Do not." A deafening screech cut through the chamber. The image distorted, twisting into something unrecognizable before vanishing completely. The silence that followed was suffocating. Jorik took an uneasy step back. "That's not how I expected that to go." Rel's hands were shaking as he checked his scanner. This ship, it wasn't abandoned because it was useless. It was abandoned because it was dangerous. Vowrick's jaw tightened. "We need to know why." The symbols along the walls flared brighter. The air grew thick with energy, and for the first time, I felt it. Not just the ship's presence, but something deeper. Something buried within. It wasn't just aware of us. It was trying to communicate. And then the whisper returned, no longer distant. It came from all around us, from within the walls, from the air itself. You should not have entered. The temperature dropped. The chamber darkened. For the first time, the ship's presence felt wrong. Not a warning this time. A threat. Jorek's breathing turned ragged. We need to leave. Now. Rel's scanner blared with alerts. Too late. Something's activating. The ship trembled, and suddenly, we weren't just visitors anymore. We were part of whatever had been waiting inside. And it wasn't going to let us go. The ship trembled beneath us, a deep vibration that crawled up through our boots and into our bones. Lights flared to life along the walls, shifting between colors in rapid succession. Red, blue, white. Flashing in patterns that felt like language, like a desperate attempt to communicate. But it wasn't just speaking to us. It was reacting to us. Vowrick grabbed Rel's arm. Shut it down. Whatever's activating, stop it. I'm trying. Rel's fingers flew over his scanner, but every time he attempted to send a command, the data on his screen scrambled, shifting faster than he could process. It's overriding me. I don't think we triggered something. I think it's waking up on its own. A deep, guttural sound echoed through the chamber, something that wasn't mechanical, but wasn't entirely organic either. A presence filled the space, heavy and unseen, pressing against us like an unseen force testing our limits. Then the whisper returned, but it wasn't a whisper anymore. It was inside us. They tried to control me. They failed. You will fail too. Jorek staggered back, hands pressed against his head. No, this isn't right. It's in my mind. Vowrick grabbed him before he could collapse. Stay with me. The ship lurched, and suddenly, we weren't standing in the chamber anymore. The walls around us blurred, the light flickering in and out like a dying star. The ship was showing us something. No, pulling us into something. Images flashed before my eyes. Humans, working side by side with something not of their world. A desperate collaboration. Equations scrawled across transparent screens, hands moving over controls that were never meant for them. And then chaos. Weapons firing. Screams. Bodies scattered across cold metal floors. The ship had turned against them. No, not the ship. Something inside it. The vision snapped away as a wave of energy surged through the room. The ship's core pulsed violently, its light shifting into an unnatural shade of black, darker than any void we had ever seen. Rel gasped. It's trying to take control of itself. If we don't stop it. The walls around us rippled, and suddenly, the passage we had entered from was gone. Sealed. Trapping us inside. Vowrick drew his weapon, but we all knew it wouldn't help. There has to be a way out. Jorek's voice was hoarse. I don't think it wants us to leave. Then the whisper returned, colder than before. You will finish what they started. The chamber darkened. The last of the human symbols faded, overtaken by the alien script, glowing with an eerie, undeniable purpose. The ship wasn't just a vessel. It was something more. Something alive. And now it had chosen us. The chamber trembled as the last remnants of human influence faded from the ship's walls. The alien symbols pulsed in slow, rhythmic waves like a heartbeat. We weren't just trapped. We were being absorbed, pulled deeper into something vast and unknowable. Jorek pressed his back against the shifting wall, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. It's not letting us go. Rel's scanner was useless now, flooded with unreadable data. It's rewriting itself. The human modifications, they were suppressing something. And now it's breaking free. Vowrick's expression darkened. Then we need to find out what they were trying to stop. A new tremor ran through the floor, this one sharp, deliberate. Then for the first time, the ship spoke, not in whispers, but in voices. Many voices. Some human, some not. We see you. A figure materialized in the air between us, flickering like a projection. It was human, or at least it had been. A woman, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow. She wore a tattered uniform, the insignia barely visible beneath dried bloodstains. Jorek's voice was barely a whisper. Who is that? The figure tilted its head. You were standing where we fell. Rel's hands clenched into fists. You were the crew. You built this. She didn't respond. Instead, the walls around us came alive with images, shifting scenes from a past long buried. Scientists, engineers, military officers, they had all been here, working, experimenting. But something had gone wrong. We watched as panic spread, alarms blaring, people running. And then darkness. Jorek turned to us, eyes wide with realization. They didn't just fail to control it. It took them. The projection flickered, and when it stabilized, more figures appeared beside her. Dozens of them. A silent army of those who had tried to wield the ship's power and lost. Then the whisper returned, merging with the voices, layered over itself like an echo of countless lost souls. They became part of me. You will too. The walls around us began to close in, the air thickening, pressing against our lungs. The ship wasn't just sentient. It was hungry. Vowrick grabbed my arm, his voice sharp. There has to be a way to fight this. Rel's fingers moved quickly over his scanner, searching for anything, an override, a weakness, a flaw. His eyes locked onto something on the floor, a faint outline beneath the shifting surface. There's something buried here. A failsafe. The ghostly woman turned her gaze to him. They tried to stop me. The walls convulsed. The ship was reacting, sensing our intent. The energy in the core flared, and the figures surrounding us began to move. Not physically, but their presence pressed in, overwhelming our senses, their silent cries filling the chamber. Jorek grabbed at his head, his voice breaking. They don't want us to stop it. Vowrick pulled him forward. That means we have to. The walls began to distort, closing the space around us, pulling us toward the core. The ship wasn't going to let us fight back. It was going to take us first. And then, beneath the rising hum, I heard something new. Faint, buried beneath the noise. A second voice, separate from the ship's. Weak but determined. A voice I recognized from the old transmission. If you can hear this, there's still a way. Captain Elias Voss. He wasn't just a recording. He was still here. The ship's walls convulsed, shifting and closing in, the symbols burning brighter as the presence inside tightened its grip. We staggered, struggling against the force pressing in on us, but the more we resisted, the more the ship pulled us in. The voices of the lost crew swarmed around us, merging with the ship's whispers, their warnings turning into something else. A command. A demand. You will become part of me. Jorek gasped, his fingers clutching his head. Rel stumbled, his scanner flickering with erratic signals. Vowrick grabbed my shoulder, his voice strained. That transmission, Voss said there was a way. The voice was fading, buried beneath the ship's growing presence, but I focused, pushing through the noise. The walls rippled, showing flashes of something hidden deep beneath the ship's surface. Buried systems, old safeguards overridden by whatever had taken control. The humans who had built this ship had tried to stop it. They had failed, but they had left something behind. I locked eyes with Rel. The failsafe. Can you activate it? Rel's hands shook, his scanner glitching as the ship fought back. It's buried under layers of interference. I need time. Time was the one thing we didn't have. The ship's core pulsed violently, its energy lashing out, and the ghostly figures around us twisted, their features distorting as they reached for us. They weren't just echoes of the past. They were something worse. Jorek screamed as a shadowy tendril wrapped around his wrist, pulling him toward the core. Vowrick fired his weapon, but the energy dispersed harmlessly against the shifting walls. The ship wasn't made of metal and circuits. It was something far beyond that. I grabbed Jorek, yanking him back as Rel frantically worked. Almost there. The ship's whisper turned into a roar. You will not stop me. The core flared, and suddenly I felt it. The presence inside wasn't just trying to consume us. It was desperate. Desperate to survive. It had been created, then abandoned. Left to evolve, to hunger, to take. The humans who had tried to control it had failed because they had never understood what they had built. And now we were the ones paying the price. Rel shouted. Failsafe engaged. The ship convulsed, the symbols flashing erratically. A deep, grating noise echoed through the chamber, not mechanical, not organic, but something in between. Pain. The ship was in pain. The figures around us flickered, their forms distorting as if something was pulling them apart. The core pulsed wildly, and the whispering voices became screams. The walls began unraveling, breaking down at the seams, the ship's control fracturing. Vowrick grabbed my arm. We need to move. The passage reopened, the ship losing its grip on reality itself. We ran, the ground shifting beneath us, the lights flickering in chaotic bursts. The presence inside thrashed against the failsafe, fighting to hold itself together. As we neared the exit, the whisper returned, weaker now, but filled with something unexpected. Not rage. Not hunger. Regret. They left me. The walls cracked, energy bleeding from the ship's core. It was dying. We crossed the threshold, stumbling into the ruined human facility, just as the ship let out one final, shuddering pulse. The entrance sealed behind us, the energy within collapsing inward. Then silence. Rel panted, staring at his scanner. It's dormant. The failsafe shut it down. Jorik shivered, rubbing his wrist where the tendrils had touched him. It tried to use us. It needed us to survive. Valric looked back at the sealed structure, his expression unreadable. And we killed it. But as I turned to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't seen the last of it. Because as the dust settled, I swore I heard one final whisper. Not yet. We stood in silence, staring at the sealed structure, our breaths still uneven. The dust swirled in slow, lazy patterns around us, settling over the wreckage of what had once been a human outpost. The air felt heavier now, as if something fundamental had changed, as if the ground itself remembered what had happened here. Rel wiped sweat from his forehead, his hands still shaking. It's over. Valric didn't look convinced. He kept his weapon lowered but ready, his gaze fixed on the sealed entrance. We thought it was over for them too. Jorik let out a nervous laugh, hollow and uncertain. Yeah, well, we're still standing. That has to count for something. But none of us moved. None of us felt safe yet. The final whisper lingered in my mind, twisting through my thoughts like a shadow that refused to fade. Not yet. Rel checked his scanner again, his fingers tapping rapidly. The energy levels are dropping. Whatever the failsafe did, it's holding. He hesitated before adding, for now. That wasn't the reassurance we wanted, but it was the best we had. We had come here expecting salvage, expecting to find an abandoned wreck and leave with whatever valuable scraps we could gather. Instead, we had found something alive, something powerful, something we never should have disturbed. And yet we had survived. Barely. Jorik took a slow step back. So, what do we do now? Just leave it. Valric exhaled sharply. We have to report this. Whatever the humans started here, whatever they built, it can't be left forgotten. Rel shook his head. You really think anyone will listen? They buried this place for a reason. If we tell them, they'll either cover it up or try to use it again. We all knew he was right. The people who had created the ship had already failed to control it once. Who was to say they wouldn't try again? I looked at the ground beneath my feet, remembering the vision we had seen. The desperate scientists, the chaos, the fear. They had believed they could wield its power. They had paid the price. Jorik's voice was quiet. Then we destroy it. No one responded at first. The thought hung between us, heavy and unspoken. It was the only way to be sure, the only way to stop anyone else from making the same mistakes. But standing there, in the shadow of the ship, I couldn't help but wonder if it was truly possible to destroy something like this. Rel exhaled slowly. If we do that, we need to be sure. We need to do it right. Valric nodded. Agreed. We rig the charges, we wipe everything clean. We make sure no one ever finds this place again. It was a grim decision, but the right one. There were no guarantees, but we had to try. We spent the next few hours planting the explosives around the base and the ship's sealed entrance. The air was still thick with tension, every sound making us flinch, every flicker of light making us question whether we had truly shut it down. The figures, the voices, the overwhelming presence, it all felt too real, too vast to simply disappear. As I placed the last charge, my fingers brushed against the cold metal surface of the ship. I didn't expect anything to happen, but for the briefest moment, I thought I felt something beneath my fingertips. A pulse. A heartbeat. Or maybe it was just my imagination. I stepped back as Valric armed the detonator. Time to go. We moved fast, retracing our path through the ruins until we reached the clearing where our ship waited. The moment we were inside, Valric set the countdown. 10 seconds. 9. 8. Through the viewport, I watched the ruins, the entrance to the ship barely visible beneath the layers of dust and debris. It looked dead, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was waiting. 3. 2. 1. The explosion ripped through the ground, a shockwave tearing across the barren landscape. The earth cracked, metal and stone collapsing inward, the entire structure crumbling into itself. Flames licked at the sky, a final burst of energy before the dust swallowed everything whole. Then silence. We waited, half expecting something to rise from the wreckage, some final sign that it wasn't truly gone. But nothing came. The ruins remained still, buried beneath the weight of their own destruction. Jorik let out a shaky breath. We did it. Valric didn't look away from the destruction. Yeah, he didn't sound convinced. Rel powered up the ship's engines. Let's get out of here. As we lifted off, leaving the ruined planet behind, I forced myself to believe that it was over, that we had done the right thing, that nothing had survived down there. But as we entered orbit, I glanced at my console, and a cold chill ran through me. A single unread message blinked on the screen. Not yet.